Hi everyone, it's Laura, and today I'm here with my mid-year check-in. So a lot of people start filming their mid-year freakouts and posting them as early as mid-June. I really just wanted to wait until June was all the way done before I even started thinking about this type of video, and I'm not quite following the typical mid-year freakout tags or questions because they're not really all applicable to me, and I just figured this is my first year doing one of these, and I'm just going to try and generally summarize how the first half of this year is going and what I hope to accomplish the rest of the year. So, first off, I'm sorry for the switch up of positions. I know this is not the best angle or place to have a video, but it is sweltering hot despite the air conditioning, and my room is a mess because I'm packing for a vacation that starts in 3 days. So my room is a mess, and I don't really want to go through the effort of making it presentable just for filming. So part of my video is to do with my physical TBR, so figured having this as a background isn't too bad. So first things first, in the first 6 months of 2025, I read a total of 100 books. Even. Yeah, that kind of surprised me too, but that's what the numbers say. So I've already met my reading goal that I had initially set at the beginning of the year because I was trying to be cautious and not too overly ambitious and account for any potential reading slumps that I might run into, but I've already met the goal. And so I have since bumped it up, and it is currently at 130 just because after June, I have already in July slowed down a lot on my reading, and I want to just account for any future peaks and valleys in that reading because I don't want reading to become a chore, but I do still like stretching for a goal. An update for the series that I'm in the middle of. As of the end of June, the total number of series I was in the middle of then was 42. With 11 of them being up to date, and then 31 are ones that I needed to make progress on. So I do want to focus on that somewhat. I am happy that I started making videos with that, although the actual series that I own the physical books of aren't that many, because I think for the most part I'm usually pretty good about buying only the first book in a series, seeing if I even like it before I commit to buying more books. Not always, but most of the time. So I will see how much progress I can make in that when I really want to focus on my physical TBR in the second half of the year, because I am very far behind in my goal for that. I had initially set the goal of wanting to get my physical TBR down to 75 by the end of the year, and that I would just be happy if I could get it under 100. And honestly, at this point, with the progress I've been making, or lack thereof, I'm really just hoping to actually hit the under 100 on the physical TBR, and I really think if I focus on it, I can. It's just, I am my own worst enemy, and I can't help myself. So, for example, at the end of June, the number of books still on my physical TBR is 116. So that is progress, but for having read 100 books, you'd think that I would have knocked more off my physical TBR than this. So a lot of them have been physical books. It's just, like I said, I'm my own worst enemy. I buy books. Even this week, I went to the used bookstore. I sold them a lot of my books that I was unhauling, and I walked out with 5 books. And then I came back and I had a new release in the mail. And tomorrow I'm having another new release in the mail. So I'm working on it, but I like to collect pretty things. So at the end of June, it was 116, and already it is currently sitting mid-July at 118. So we'll see how it goes, but I am still optimistic that I can get under 100, and hopefully I can far surpass that. I really highly doubt at this point that I'll make it to 75, but you never know. There could be a miracle. And then another thing is I did have 25 books I want to read in 2025, and of those so far I've read 10. So not too bad, although I felt like I was really starting the year off strong, and that I had made good progress in the early part of the year, and then I kind of stalled. But I'm picking up steam again. So on the list I read Emily Wilde's Compendium of Lost Tales, A Drop of Corruption, The House by the Cerulean Sea, Just for the Summer, Wisteria, Dark Matter, The 7-Year Slip, Circe, The Third Gilmore Girl, and Murder at Spindle Manor. So those are the 10 that were on the list. But in July, I've already read Spinning Silver and Uprooted, which are also on the list. Well, I haven't technically finished it. I have 60 pages left, so it will be done before this video is posted. So this is 2 more off the list. And then I just got in the mail The Enchanted Greenhouse, which is kind of a companion standalone book in the universe of The Spell Shop. I believe this is about the librarian that made Cass, the sentient spider plant in The Spell Shop, the one who was turned basically into a statue. So I'm actually bringing this on my vacation and hope to read it next week because it's cozy and I think that my brain can handle it in vacation mode. So hopefully that will be 3 more off the list of 25. And then we'll see how well it goes in the rest of the list. Unfortunately, the hardest thing I think on this list is going to be my ambitious idea to put the remaining 4 Stormlight Archive books on this list in 1 year. I started off strong, but I just stalled on Words of Radiance. And it's not because I didn't like it, it's just because my brain wasn't in the mood to properly appreciate it. And I don't know if other people can relate, but I wasn't in the mood for the high fantasy in that book. And anytime I considered picking it up, I just thought, not today, maybe tomorrow, or maybe in a few days. And then it just kept snowballing like that. And like I said, it's not because I didn't enjoy what I've read so far. And I do hope to get back into it. Maybe once I return from vacation, refreshed, I can get back into that world and make some progress. But honestly, I think that's going to be the hardest thing to focus on my 25 of 2025 because they're all bricks. So we'll see. And now I'm going to be talking about my favorites of the year so far, my disappointments, and the surprises. Now, the favorites aren't going to necessarily be just pulled from books that I rated 5 stars. These are just the books that, looking back, that have stuck with me the most so far and that bring me the most joy remembering the reading experience. And some of them are more recent reads just because obviously those are in more recent memory. So Sorcery and Small Magics. I was just cautious going into this book, not sure because it seemed to be getting some mixed reviews from a lot of the booktubers that I follow, and it seemed like it would be right up my alley, but I didn't want to get my hopes up and be sorely disappointed. Thankfully, I wasn't. This was a book that I really, really enjoy. It was basically perfect for me, and I can't wait till book 2 comes out, whenever that will be. Then Inkblood Sister Scribe. This is a book that was getting a lot of hype from a lot of booktubers that I followed, and I try not to let the hype rile me up too much, but it sucked me in, and the way the story was told and the way the magic worked in the world, and the surprise that this was just actually in our current day world and not some fantasy world like I had assumed just based on the name. I just really liked it, and the way that the story was told and written, it just made me eager to continue turning the page. So I was very excited, and I loved this book and ended up buying a special edition, and I look forward to rereading it someday in the future. Then A Letter to the Luminous Deep. This is another book that I actually had the willpower to resist buying when I saw its sequel in Barnes & Noble and found out it was the second book, but based on the cover, I had to fight hard not to buy it, and then I listened to it on audiobook format. It's an epistolary book. And I was surprised how much I enjoyed this style and how you kind of gradually gather tidbits of the world building and the story from those letters. So I'm on the waiting list for the audiobook for the second book in the duology because it's a new release and I want a matching beautiful copy, but I don't think Fairy Loot has made a version yet, so I don't want to just buy any random version. So I'm just gotta wait for my Libby Hole to come in so I can finish the duology. And then A Marvelous Light. I've had this on my bookshelves for quite a while now. I did start reading it at one point and enjoyed it, but I just softy enough because I just wasn't in the mood for reading in general at that point. And I put it down, I want to say maybe no more than 50 pages in. So I finally started it again, read all the way through, loved it. Can't wait to continue on in the trilogy and see what happens with the stories. Now, the biggest disappointments. These aren't necessarily the worst books that I read so far this year, but these are ones that I had high hopes for, and they just did not live up to those expectations. The first is The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. I've heard a lot of good things about this, and it seemed like a story that was right up my alley, and a guy wakes up and he's living the same day over and over, and he's jumping from body to body, trying to figure out this mystery of who killed Evelyn Hardcastle, and to, in his mind, prevent it, and who is he, what's going on, why is the day repeating. It seemed perfectly suited for a story I would enjoy, and I just, sadly, it was not for me. I know that it's highly regarded by some of my friends and by other people in the book community. It was not for me. I didn't like the end. I found it very unsatisfying, the answer of or why the main character was there and how everything is resolved. Then Circe. You might be surprised that's in this category, but based on my love of the Percy Jackson series by Rick Riordan, I thought that I would enjoy mythological retellings. I like hearing different culture myths, and Circe obviously is still in line with the Percy Jackson series basically, so it's not even too far outside my comfort zone, but it was just depressing to read, and I like to read for fun and enjoyment and to brighten my mood. And while bad things can happen, ultimately, I like there to be a happy ending. I'm sappy that way, and I don't like stories or tales that just beat down the characters so much. And I forgot just how tragic a lot of Greek legends and stories are. So that was really my bad and nothing to do with how well written this book was. And I know it's a fan favorite. It's just for me personally, in my reading taste, I don't think after reading this and Ariadne last year, I don't think this genre is for me. So I will not be continuing on to read like Electra, I know is another book. I think there's something else. So I'm willing to try other books. I still have The Witch and the Tsar in here, which kind of a retelling of Baba Yaga. I was enjoying that, but I think that type of thing is fictionalized enough that it could still be enjoyable. It's not so much of one of the versions of a myth, because at least from my understanding, the Ariadne and the Circe books that I read, there's numerous different versions of their stories, and the author just kind of chose one and filled in the story, and it's just not for me. So then The City of Stardust. This book sounded amazing. It looked great. I picked it up at the bookstore. I was excited to read it, and then I was just utterly disappointed by it. I didn't feel that the world was well fleshed out. The magical system, the villain, I didn't like the main character. She was so smart in many ways, but naive in the biggest, most glaring way. And I just didn't like how things ended or resolved, or any of the answers we got. None of it was really satisfying. And so that was just a really big flop in my opinion. And then along similar lines was the In-Between Bookstore. I hated the main character, and he was so wishy-washy and indecisive. He didn't communicate well with anyone. The weird fixation he has on this bookstore and trying to talk to his past self to figure out what happened to his relationship with his high school best friend in this magical bookstore, that he can time travel to his past in this bookstore, and this is what he's focusing on. Like, it was such a flop for me. So of the 4 books in this category, I did own 3 of them, and they have all been unhauled, so that's why I have no physical copy to hold up. Now, the biggest surprises. The first one is going to be The Full Moon Coffee Shop, because I believe this is the 3rd of the translated healing fiction books that I read, The Cat Who Saved Books and the Kamigawa Food Detectives. And at that point, with this 3rd book, I was starting to think that maybe that genre is not really for me. And I was so pleasantly surprised when I actually really enjoyed this story. And I can't really point out how it varied so much from the other 2. This just resonated with me in a way that the other 2 didn't. So I do have hopes, and I will continue to search for the translated healing works that actually work for me and not just give up the genre as a whole. But it was unexpected at this point that I could still really enjoy this type of book. So unexpected but pleasant surprise. Then next was The Fake Mate. I actually went into this, I'd heard good things. I think Mel Reed recommended this, but I don't always see eye to eye with her on her recommendations. There's not really one booktuber that I share all my opinions with, and so I take all recommendations with a grain of salt. But once I found out that this was Omegaverse and romance, sometimes they're very hit or miss, especially with the third act conflict. If it's a miscommunication trope, or if there's an unnecessary love triangle, that really can hinder the enjoyment for me. So I was very pleasantly surprised by how everything played out in this book, and I'm looking forward to reading. Oh, here comes Oliver. He found me, and I'm on the floor. Uh-oh. So I look forward to reading more Lana Ferguson books in the future. And then last, Somewhere Beyond the Sea. Mostly because Becca in the Books is the only one I've seen that I can remember actually talking about this book. And she was discussing how it's basically unnecessary and the same story as The House in the Cerulean Sea, just told again from Arthur's perspective, and that was not needed. But I actually found this very heartwarming. I've actually seen quite a few people on BookTube say that they don't see the point in epilogues. I love epilogues. I'm a sucker for epilogues. So getting to find out what happened with Linus, Arthur, and the children after the events of the first book, I liked it, and seeing how their bond as a family has grown, it warms my heart, and I thoroughly enjoyed this book. So I went in with low expectations, and I was pleasantly surprised. So I think that's all I really want to talk about. Hi. I know, right here, easy access. But what are my plans for the rest of 2025? Like I said, I want to focus more on my physical TBR. There's no real order to these books, so just books on the top shelf are the ones that I'm most eager and excited to read. And then still somewhat eager, but not as excited. And then the bottom shelf, which you can't even see, is the ones that would not probably be on my physical TBR if I were in a bookstore buying these books today. But I still want to give them a chance before just blindly hauling them. So I don't know if I can tilt the camera down more so you can see, if you can see the bottom shelf. So these are the books that I'm not as eager to read, but if anyone sees any hidden gems on any of these shelves that should be bumped up to higher priority, please let me know. Otherwise, I will continue to let the jar pick what I read, or just my whims and what mood I'm in at the time. But I'll be honest, if it's up to my mood, most of the time it's going to be the shelf that I pick from. This one only if it's ready for an immediate borrow from Libby, and haven't done it before, but less often. So I do really want to focus on these books. I also want to continue reading the new releases. I don't have a lot of new releases coming out. The Enchanted Greenhouse was one. Then I have the book that's coming tomorrow is, I think it's A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping. I believe that's the name of it. I'll put it up here, which is the second book after the Irregular Witches book. I forget the name of the first book. I don't know if they're in the same series or related, but it's the same author. A Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches. But I didn't know they were the same author, and when I saw that, that's what made me decide to pre-order this book. And then I already read A Drop of Corruption, which was earlier this year. I don't think I have any other big releases that I've pre-ordered. I am looking forward to my Barnes & Noble special edition copies of One Dark Window and Two Twisted Crowns, which I purchased. Those come out, I believe, in September. And then the holiday special for the Belladonna series, Holly, that's coming out in the fall. So I hope to read that. So that's 3 books: The Enchanted Greenhouse, A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping, and Holly, that I want to read before the end of the year. Like I said, I want to get back into the Stormlight archives, hopefully make some more progress. The fall is not the time for me, especially November and December, to make great leaps in a dense fantasy series. So I very highly doubt that I will reach the goal of getting through the remaining 4 books. But I do hope at least to make more headway in the Cosmere. I want to continue playing it by ear and reading at the pace that doesn't put me in a reading slump, but lets me make progress. I tend to just be overly ambitious and then get decision paralysis when I have too many options. So that has ruined some of my Libby experiences where I end up having 8 audiobooks ready and I can't decide what to listen to. For immediately for July, like I said, I've read Spinning Silver. I want to finish Uprooted. I want to read The Enchanted Greenhouse on vacation. I am also in the middle of The Scarlet Alchemist. I don't know if you see that up here. I want to continue on with the light novel of That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime, because I don't want to go too long in between volumes, and they're an easier read to get through. I also really want to read The Will of the Many. I'd planned to read it earlier in this year, but I just didn't get a chance to, and then when I found out that the second book was coming out in the fall of this year, I figured it wouldn't hurt to bump back reading this book until closer to when the second book comes out. So hopefully maybe August or September. I need to check exactly when The Strength of the Few comes out, but I want to read The Will of the Many. I'm eager to get into that world, and I want to just continue on with the different videos series that I have started, the physical TBR and the series reading, and those are pretty much my goals. So I think that's all I have to say for this video. Here's the breakdown more in detail for the total books I've read with the pages and how I enjoyed them, whether it was an immersion read, whether I physically read them or they were audiobook only, or if it was a light novel, manhwa, or manga. And here are the overall genres. Here are the overall moods. And then here is a breakdown of the star ratings and how many I've given of each so far this year. So I think that's it for this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!